Savior of the world.
When it comes to the prophecies of Jesus, one of the most remarkable things is what takes place when you take those prophecies of Jesus and you work them out mathematically. Now, there has been a mathematician who's done that. Peter Stoner, famous mathematician, went in, looked at how many prophecies there were, 300 prophecies. And then as he broke down those prophecies, he said, let me just take 8 of them and figure out what's the likelihood of 8 of these prophecies being fulfilled in one person's life.
So Professor Stoner gives us an illustration. It helps us to understand the nature of probability. So let's just say that 1 in every 10 men that you meet has a bald head, and 1 in every 100 men that you meet happen to have a missing finger. You want to find out how many men are there that I'm going to bump into that actually have a missing finger and a bald head. So what you do is you multiply the first 2 figures, and then you have your answer. 1 in every 1,000 men that you meet are going to actually have a missing finger and a bald head.
Peter Stoner presented his class with a challenge. The class was to look at the Bible and try to find all the prophecies regarding the coming of Christ to see what was the probability that one man could come out of all the men that existed in the history of the world and yet fulfill exactly every single prophecy.
One of the prophecies that Peter W. Stoner mentions is Zechariah 9:9, which reads, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The question is how many people in Earth's history have been kings? And of those individuals, how many have ridden on a donkey into Jerusalem?
Well, I don't know. Neither did the class. So they decided to assign an absurdly high number. They decided 1 out of every 100 men who ever lived rode into Jerusalem as a king on a donkey, of all things. I mean, 1 in 100. This is obviously absurdly high, but that's the point. Stoner effectively buffered his calculations and thus his conclusions against objections that he had biased his calculations to favor Jesus' identification as the Messiah.
Another prophecy that Professor Stoner looked at was Micah chapter 5 and verse 2.
In Micah 5 verse 2, there's an incredible prophecy that is given hundreds of years before the birth of Christ, pinpointing exactly the place where Jesus would be born. It states, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel."
What's amazing is the fact that there are 2 Bethlehems, 2 cities called Bethlehem in Israel, one in the northern portion of the kingdom, one in the south.
This specifies which Bethlehem. This specifies Bethlehem Ephratah, which is Bethlehem in Judah. So the prophecy is very precise. But in addition to that, when you think about Mary and Joseph, Mary finds out that she's pregnant. She's in Nazareth. And yet suddenly this decree comes out. This census is being proclaimed by the Romans. And they're told that they have to go back to the birthplace of the husband. And so Joseph makes his way to Bethlehem in Ephratah.
They have to take their family back to Bethlehem. Joseph has to be taxed according to Roman law. Jesus is born in Bethlehem.
The prophecy fulfilled right to the very, very place where Micah, hundreds of years earlier, predicted it to happen was just remarkable when you think about all the circumstances involved.
So Stoner and his students, they decided that they wanted to figure out, in the light of the world's population, how many people have actually been born in the city of Bethlehem. 1 out of every 280,000 people was a very conservative estimate that they made, that they found mathematically, of how many people have actually been born in Bethlehem.
Now, another prophecy they looked at is found in the 53rd chapter of the book of Isaiah. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth.
Stoner brings this out, that Jesus was a just man, condemned to die, and he said not a word, not one word in his defense.
Now, how many have done that? Well, his class didn't know. Of course not. How could you know? So here again, they assigned a conservatively high number. For the purposes of their calculations, they said, okay, how about 1 in every 1,000 men who ever lived were both wrongly accused of a crime and during their trial chose to speak no word in their defense.
And then as he broke down those prophecies, he said, let me just take 8 of them and figure out what's the likelihood of 8 of these prophecies being fulfilled in one person's life. So just with those 8 prophecies, he said the probability of one person fulfilling all 8 was 1 in 10 to the power of 17. That's like taking silver dollars all over Texas.
They covered the entire state. And on one of those coins, somewhere in the state, you have a particular coin marked with a black X.
And you put it randomly, stir it up somehow, and randomly put it somewhere in the state of Texas, covered 2 feet deep with these silver dollars. And you send a blind man in. The probability that he will just wander the state of Texas, reach down on his first try, and come up with this marked silver dollar is the probability that one man could fulfill all 8 of these prophecies about Jesus.
Now, not only that, but he went further and he said, all right, let me see if I take 48 of these.
48 out of the 300. Okay, what's the probability that one man in the history of the world could fulfill just 48 of these prophecies? And the number was a staggering 1 man out of 1 with 157 zeros after it. That number is so big, just to give you an idea, scientists have determined that there are only 1 with 80 zeros after it, atoms, in the entire universe. That's not just our planet or our solar system or our galaxy, but the entire universe only has 1 with 80 zeros after it.
There's not even enough atoms in the universe in order to hold that number. Now, this answers the question about some people say, well, maybe a lot of people have met these prophecies. Maybe it's not just, Jesus, that you could have a whole bunch of people who meet all of these prophecies. But that's just not possible.
It's so mind-boggling. It's so impossible. And that's not even close to the probability of what it would be to fulfill 48, which is 1 with 157 zeros after it. Staggering. Staggering. That's only 48 prophecies. There are 300.
What you've got in here is you've got something so remarkable that the whole universe can hold it. In fact, this is what Peter Stoner said. He said, any man who rejects Christ as the Son of God is rejecting a fact proved perhaps more absolutely than any other fact in the world.